It's one thing to go through a pandemic in your home country, but it's a whole other ballgame when you're living on the other side of the world. So I moved to London, from Montreal, from Sydney, over 3.5 years, persevered through all the ups and downs, and I landed my dream job in December 2019. Then what happened? This year, in 2020. Well, a lot. I was enjoying my job, I had stability, I was earning money and taking full advantage of this whole living somewhere with access to extremely cheap flights thing, which as an Australian is non-negotiable. The plan, the dream when I moved to London was to take weekend trips to other countries every weekend. And while it wasn't every single weekend, I was doing just that. A weekend in Milan, Norway for a day, a ski trip to Germany, and even somewhere an ocean away for a weekend. Just because there were cheap flights and I wanted to see if it was possible. I was planning tons of adventures, weeks and months in advance, and was really enjoying this newfound work-life balance. While I was running wild with this in January and February, the whole coronavirus pandemic was brewing on the other side of the world and felt like a faraway thing. Back then, the biggest thing in the news were the insane bushfires back home. Feels like a decade ago. I'm not going to talk about the actual pandemic too much because everyone knows the story and is sick of talking about it. But just to get nostalgic for a second. Does anyone remember when the biggest deal about the pandemic was that Diamond Princess cruise ship off the coast of Japan? Good times. Good times. That's where we were at. Even back then, I thought as soon as the virus hit the UK, we would be doomed because nobody here has any sense of hygiene. I don't know about you, but in Australia, we were taught really basic manners growing up, such as covering your mouth when you cough or you sneeze, not mic dropping trash on the ground while walking as if it was cool, or looking both ways before you cross a road, or having any spatial awareness whatsoever. Yeah, nobody really does that here. On the coughing, I've seen people cough into the open, on the tube, on city streets, at fresh food, in supermarkets. That was yesterday. And in my office. I never noticed this in Australia, in Montreal, in Paris, anywhere I've traveled to, only here. This is a British problem. Anyway, the virus arrived and look at where we're at now. Brilliant. Brilliant. I had my ski trip to Germany with a friend booked for March over a month in advance, and that was the last trip I went on before the lockdown. The plan was to fly into Munich because it was the cheapest flight, and then rent a car and drive down to South Tyrol in northern Italy. Then Italy locked down, so we changed to Austria. Then, the night I arrived into Munich, Austria shut down all their ski fields, so we found a ski field on the literal border of Germany and Austria. Half the ski field was in Germany, half of it was in Austria. One wrong turn, and my Germany residing friend would get stuck in quarantine on the way back. It was a surreal trip. Flying into Munich felt like I was going into an active war zone. But once we were there and driving through the serene sound of music-like landscapes of the German countryside, it was so easy to forget that the entire world was falling apart at this very moment, with the situation changing every hour of every day. Once I returned to London, we got the work from home order that week for the next 2 months, they said at the time, and the UK went into lockdown. After the first official day of working from home, my supervisor started having very frank calls with both me and my co-worker, who's an expat from Canada and on the same working holiday visa as I am. Keep in mind that we are both contractors, not official employees of the company. The furlough scheme didn't exist or was even announced at the time, and the whole world felt like it was shutting down and society was collapsing. This was peak March. Peak March. At this moment in time, we were still able to get home. Home, as in Australia. That was still an option. My supervisor on this call told me point blank, Lashan, I don't know where you're going to be or I'm going to be 1 month from now. No idea. And to add to this, my project was a major airport upgrade. Airports in March 2020, how do I put this, aren't exactly the most ideal industry to be in because they're all shutting down. So my supervisor asked me, okay, Lashan, if all the airports shut down and then you lost your job, what would happen? And I was like, well, I can't find another job because there aren't any. I don't have family here. I don't have access to unemployment benefits or government assistance because I have a visa which states no public funds. And I can barely eat dinner sometimes as it is because I can't find any food in the supermarkets. And I can't leave the country to go back home to Australia. So basically, I would be trapped here in London, slowly run out of money, starve, and die. Which is not the best predicament. So following that, my supervisor said, okay, Lashan, I need you to make a decision right now, whether you want to stay through whatever this is. And it could be anything because we don't know. Or you can pack your bags, quit your job, and go back home to Australia tomorrow, right away. That's the ultimatum I was given. To give context, I had worked so hard to get to this point. I moved from Sydney, Australia to Montreal for 2.5 years, learned French, spent 8 months looking for a job, got it, had everything fall apart at the last second, moved to London, persevered for 6 months through one of the most expensive cities in the world, and right before I gave up on the place, I landed the job of my dreams. Now you have the job, you're living it, everything is working out, and right as you're getting into a groove, the world grabs you by the arms, shakes you, and says, give it up. All of it. Throw it all away and go back to square one. Part of the appeal of moving to another country is giving in to that ever-present question in the back of your head. What if? What if you threw your entire life into the air and started again somewhere new? How would you handle it? Who are you without your safety net? Without everything you've taken for granted? Who are you? There's a thrill, the risk, the adventure. It's exciting. It takes away all the periphery in your life and simplifies your life down to make it work. But it's a risk that you throw yourself into by choice, self-selection. It's different when it's a decision that feels forced upon you and out of your control. This was one of the toughest decisions I've ever made. And I thought about it a lot. Coupled with me simply not feeling safe in London, there was an overwhelming part of me saying to give it up, to go home. This decision sucks, sure, but you can figure it out later because right now, you need to be safe. But I didn't want to give up on my life abroad so easily. Like any major decision I've ever made, I broke it up into pros and cons. I thought about what the logistics were if I was to go back to Australia. To leave would be to give up the job that I had for basically guaranteed unemployment in Australia, a country in recession. But forgetting all of that, there was also the issue of the flight. So many people catch coronavirus on that specific flight from London to Sydney. I don't have anywhere to live in Australia apart from my parents' house. So in the act of going home out of my own safety, I would run the risk of killing my parents. They are old. If they caught the virus, they would not handle it too well. This is something I had to think about. After a lot of thought and discussing with friends, I decided to stay. The main reason being that I didn't want to give up on my life in London just yet. To make a decision based purely on fear of what could happen. I still had my job. I was working, and none of these potential possibilities had actually eventuated yet. Even if things fell apart, I figured I'd be able to make it through. Whatever happens. I took a bet on myself. So, what happened? Well, following my decision to stay, my project, like all other airport projects, shut down. And I was involved in the wrap-up process, which took about a month or so, but once that was done, my work ran out and I was given a week's notice. Yep, things were looking pretty grim and I started scrambling thinking, oh shit. But my supervisor told me, okay, look, Lashan, I am going to try to find you something to keep you going up until that last day of that 1 week's notice. So I waited and he kept trying, finding nothing. And then with the day left to go, he tells me, Lashan, I have a potential lead and I'll get back to you tomorrow morning. Next morning came around and he didn't. So then I spent the entirety of my last day at work wrapping things up and saying goodbye to people, but not actually knowing if it would be my last day or not. It got to the point where I had 30 minutes before I would clock off, and I was having a call with my director who's being super nice and supportive, sending me off, and even then, I didn't know. Then, with 15 minutes left to go, I got a call from my recruiter. Hey Lashan, your supervisor just found something for you starting tomorrow. Are you done? Yes, oh my god. Right at the last moment, everything came through. Lashan, this seems to be quite the recurring pattern in your life. I know. So I did that job for 2 weeks. I was saved, and then I switched on to another project, which is super stable. I'm still working on it, and life is good. I survived. I somehow made it through this crazy year with my job intact. Job aside though, as an Australian citizen living abroad, this whole situation has been extremely tough mentally. Australia, at the moment, is doing great. You barely need masks because the virus more or less doesn't exist in the country anymore, which is an extremely foreign concept to those of us in Europe or anywhere else. It's the getting to Australia part which is the challenge. The situation at this point is that only Australian citizens can enter Australia, and if you do fly in, you are subject to a mandatory 2 weeks of hotel quarantine. This used to be free, now it costs $3,000. But there have also been caps placed on weekly arrivals, which has forced airlines to prioritize higher paying customers. This means that if you buy an economy class ticket back to Australia, there is every likelihood that your ticket will get cancelled and rescheduled and cancelled and rescheduled. Repeat ad infinitum. For some people who have lost their job and have no option but to go back home to Australia, they can't. They've just been stranded wherever they are for months or even since March, trying to get home. The only reliable way to get home is to buy a business or first class ticket, which depending on where you are can range from $10,000 or even $15,000. Coupled with a mandatory $3,000 hotel quarantine, this would bankrupt me, as it would plenty of other Australians overseas. With no way to get home, we're effectively stateless. Our government does not seem to care. We either make it out here or we have nothing. And with my visa coming up for expiry a little over 5 months from now, it's getting me kind of nervous. At the start of 2020, I didn't really like London much at all and saw it as more of a base to travel to everywhere I wanted to be. But once everything locked down, my world shrunk to just London, and I was forced to look at it in a different light. It's been surreal exploring the city by bike during lockdown, navigating iconic locations like Tower Bridge, Piccadilly Circus, Buckingham Palace, and Westminster without a soul in sight. It's been incredible. It's like the city became the world's largest movie set, and it was all yours. Before, London didn't feel like home. It was more me against the city. But then over the course of this year, this pandemic, it's kind of snuck up from behind and assumed the identity of home without even me realizing until it was. That's where I'm at right now. It feels familiar. It feels comfortable. I know my favorite places to go, my favorite cafe, my favorite run. I know the city like the back of my hand. Once you get that job sorted and you're stable in the city, you actually have the freedom and the time to enjoy everything London has to offer. And you start to realize it's actually quite a nice place to live. Okay, so editing Lashan here. While editing this video, quite a lot of things have changed just last night. London has been pushed into tier 4 of a 3-tier system, which was made up because they didn't want to admit they were going back into another lockdown, even though that's exactly what it is. And the reason for the lockdown is that there is a new strain of the coronavirus, which is 70% more transmissible and more effective at spreading than the original strains of the coronavirus. And it was already fast enough. That's going around London and Southeast England right now. And I'm here. The lockdown will continue until, I don't know, spring, end of my visa, probably. Months, they said. Basically until the vaccine rolls out, which is probably the only way to stop the spread because no one listens to the rules here. We're not allowed to leave London. All international travel is banned. All other countries are slowly right now starting to close their borders to the UK. So I am basically trapped in the worst place possible. So yeah, get me the fuck out of here. Back to the video. You begin to appreciate the city for what it is. Do I want familiar and stable though? Do I want to stay here? That I don't know, but I could. So yeah, that's everything that's been going on in my life this year in 2020. Well, not everything. I don't put everything on here. Did a bunch of insane travels too, some successful. Oh my god! Some, how do we say this? Some almost, but not. I went full send on 2020. It's been quite the roller coaster, and I'm sure it's been extremely tough for all of you. If you've been an expat through this pandemic, I'd love to know what your experience has been in the comments, or if your plans to move abroad have been affected in any way, like I know some of my friends have. Please like this video if you found it interesting or entertaining, and subscribe if you haven't already. I've got a ton of video ideas I'm super excited to get to work on in 2021, which don't involve me sitting in this room for hours, though there will be those as well. And if you have any ideas of what you'd like to see from me in the future, let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching to the end. I hope you all have a nice, safe, socially distanced end to this chaotic year, and I'll see you in the next one next year in 2021. All right, Lashan out.